The lives are, for the most part, intersections of the genetic material, the experiences that have been experienced previously in this life, and also the experiences of the past life of the soul that is most often in that life. And so the life can be a source of violence, sometimes just based on what has been done to them in that life. And this is not woo-woo out there topic. It's well known that people who have had violence enacted upon them will enact violence upon others in a cycle of trauma. And so in that way, often it can be a source from the life itself, even if the guardian angels and the soul are saying, no, don't enact force on other presences, live your soul plan, leave other people alone. This is not what you're supposed to be doing. Sometimes the body really is so stuck in that immediate trauma that it will be the source of violence. And interesting. So now they're talking about the past lives and they're talking about the soul. One of the things that the soul brings with it, for the most part, are the memories of previous lives. And that does become ingrained into the DNA of the body. It does start to live in the cells of the body, but it is most connected to the soul. And so often when people are acting out of past life trauma, and if reincarnation is something you're uncomfortable with, this might be something you're uncomfortable with. And so that's one way in which the soul can be a source of violence. If the soul comes into the life, there's someone we know very deeply who was born into this life with so much past life trauma that he came in carrying this past life trauma. The body had never experienced trauma. The body was born into a loving family, a kind family, a caring family, but the soul had come into the life with so much trauma that it was a violent child. This was a child who enacted an awful lot of force on the presences in his life, acting on response to what the soul had come in with. And so that's an example when the soul can be a source of violence. Now, this is where it gets tricky because we are living in a time of astral breakdown. There are also out-of-body presences who have a lot of different names. Some people call them dark spirits. I know that the jinn is something that is referenced in other cultures, although I don't know much about it, to be brutally honest. People talk about ghosts. This is sometimes a ghost issue where there are out-of-body presences who really want something to happen that they have decided needs to happen, or maybe even that their guardian angels have been telling them needs to happen. They ran out of time during the period in which they were in a body, in which they were alive, and they want someone else to make it happen. And so those people can often be referred to as body snatchers, which I know is a scary term, but it is essentially what they're doing when they will attempt to hijack a life. They will attempt to hijack a presence to get that presence to do what it is they want to do. And sometimes you'll hear about this in criminal trials when the perpetuator will be on the witness stand in a courtroom, and sometimes an attorney, sometimes a judge, someone will ask them, why did you do what you did? What was going through your mind when you did that thing that we all have agreed as a society is a bad thing to do? And that person will say something like, it didn't even feel like me. I feel like I was disconnected from my body. I felt like I left my body and it was someone else perpetuating those things. I don't even have memory of it. Sometimes they will literally not have memory of having committed the atrocities. This is one of those examples when sometimes it really is an out-of-body presence with a whole lot of force who finds someone who is in a weak moment, sometimes because of a personal issue, sometimes genuinely just because they're asleep, but they're not in great control over the comings and goings of the soul in their life in that moment for whatever reason. And that badly intentioned presence can jump into the body and use the body essentially as a puppet. And so that is another possible source of violence. So we have well-meaning guardian angels. We have guardian angels for other presences who are trying to get something done for the presence they're responsible for. We have the guardian angels of that person trying to impart a lesson, and they're willing to cross some lines to get that person to finally recognize that they're making a mistake or a series of mistakes. So those are two guardian angel situations. We have the soul in the body who sometimes can be acting out of past life trauma that they're needing to work through. We can have souls not related to the body who are sometimes just straight up body snatching, using someone else's life force in order to accomplish the goals they want. And then we have the body itself that sometimes is responding to traumas from earlier in that life. And sometimes, this is interesting, and I hadn't thought about this, we know that there are bodies who are born wired for sound. Sometimes it's psychic people, and those are bodies who can experience emotions very powerfully. And even if it's not some badly intentioned presence trying to hijack the life, sometimes when those emotions come in so powerfully, the body responds to them more than a normal person would. And then that can also result in violence. Even if nobody upstairs or no out-of-body presences are particularly focused on that life, the life itself can feel an emotion so much and not know how to respond to it that it lashes out. So that's another way that's wonderful. And now, one of the hardest things for us to start to look at is when violence comes from much, much, much higher guardian angels who are responsible for planets, who are responsible for full dimensions, who are responsible for bigger groups. And now we have to start to ask, why is there sometimes violence that come from those presences? Hi! If you've enjoyed hearing the answers channeled by the Wiser Minds Above so far, I highly recommend that you boogie on over to my Patreon account to see the rest of this channeled session. All of these questions do get answered, and they are available for you on Patreon. You can find the link to my Patreon channel down below this video. If you actually are interested in seeing more of this content, in hearing answers to questions, in interacting more with the kinds of questions that are being asked, please do go to the Patreon, join the Patreon. You can see the rest of this channeled session. It's great. They give great answers, and it's such a pleasure and it's such a delight to get to experience them firsthand, to get to have a front row seat to a show of divine miracles. There's really nothing better in the world. So go ahead and do that if you're interested, and from there we'll gauge how many more of these videos do they want us to make, how much longer do they want us to continue to create public resources for this kind of work. If you have questions that you think might be more personal to you, that are less about humanity as a whole, the planet as a whole, and more about your own life, how to handle certain situations, how to respond emotionally, actively to certain moments that you have facing or that you have already faced, if you have physical issues, emotional issues, interpersonal issues that you would not like to share publicly, but you would like to work through with the help of the big guys upstairs who are responsible for you, I highly recommend that you request a healing session. You can go to my website, ocalaequinehealing.com. You can send me a little message through that contact form. I do healing sessions for people all over the world by phone, and they're incredibly effective, and it would maybe be helpful for you. Or maybe not. Maybe you'll get everything you need from these publicly shared videos. It's really up to you. So there are a lot of different options. There are freely available videos on YouTube. There are the videos through the Patreon channel. And if you're interested in having a private healing session, go ahead and contact me and we'll see what we can do. We'll see if we can make that work. Thank you for joining us today.